Hello, if you've watched my previous videos, you will know I like to share my writing and creative planning process, and I have shared video of my post-its and my journals and my planning journals. And I know for some of you, it really helps to see this visual process that I've got. And I wrote an article about it on my Substack earlier this week, and I had a big response to it. The article was all about being overwhelmed. I called it, "Is Your Head Overwhelmed with Ideas?" And that was in response to the video I did last, which was about creative overwhelm and planning my writing and creative tasks. And some of the responses I got were really interesting because they could have been written by me a few years ago. And so I thought I'd put this video together to bring some of those comments together and to give you some tips on how I do my planning process. Now, I've divided my tips into two segments. So I've got getting your head straight first tips, and then I've got the more practical tips. So bear with me, it will make sense, I promise. And I've got my notes down in my writing journal, so I will have to keep looking down. So I do hope you understand that. I'm not very good, or I'm out of the practice, I should say, at talking to camera and kind of making it up as I'm going along. So I get very confused in my head, and that brings me on to a perfection point that I will talk about shortly. But firstly, I want to talk about not giving yourself so much to do. And I think that's really crucial when it comes to successful planning of your writing and creative projects, because so many of us, myself included, I've done this in the past, I've done this recently back in August, September of last year, where you just give yourself so much to do. I have seen so many people who think they can start Substack, they can write twice a week on that Substack, they can create a podcast and a YouTube channel all in the same month. All in the same month. And I'm like, whoa, that is a lot. It's a lot. It's such a lot, especially when you are starting a new project from scratch. If you already know about YouTube and you've already created videos on YouTube in the past and you're an old pro at it, fair enough. I could see you do two of those in a month. But to do all three and to consistently create content for all three, as well as starting it up from scratch, is just a lot. Believe me. So if that's you, please do rethink that and just focus on one project in a month. And once that's up and running, then you can think about adding an additional project into the mix. But there's no way I could start all three. There's no way I could start two all in the same month. It's just impossible. And I think what happens is when you fail to do it, you then beat yourself up. You then call yourself a failure. You then compare yourself to other creatives who seem to be able to do it perfectly with no stress whatsoever. And it causes a massive decrease in your confidence. So I beg you, please do rethink how many projects you give yourself within 1 month or 1 week or whatever time frame. Just focus on one, get that up and running, and then start on the next one. The second tip I've got for you, and this is the perfectionism one, is don't put so much pressure on yourself to make each project perfect, because that's impossible. But also, I think one of the beauty One of the beauties of creating online is that you can learn as you go. And if I look back at some of my old videos now, they are, even some of my recent ones, they're not perfect. There are things that I would change about them. There are places in them where I think, Helen, why did you do that? But if I waited until I was perfect, which isn't going to happen, I would never do anything. And I would still be sitting here wishing that I had articles on a Substack, wishing that I had a back catalogue of videos on my YouTube. Perfectionism, I think, is just fear. If you are trying to make things perfect, it is because you are scared of releasing it into the world. And also you fear being judged by others. And quite frankly, no one is going to judge you. And if they do, and yes, that has happened to me, sometimes it stings, but I think it says more about that person than it does about you. And you just have to brush it off and push forward, because the only person that will lose out is yourself. So don't give yourself too much to do, and don't try and make everything perfect, because again, that is giving yourself too much to do, because you might write and edit and rewrite and edit for so long. You're making an article take so much longer than, writing it, putting it out there, reading the comments, learning, experimenting, trying, and then taking all those lessons from that one that you've put out into your next one and getting better each time. Now, my third tip is all about being overwhelmed, and this could come from having too many projects to do. This could come from perfectionism, but equally it could come from having too many ideas and not knowing where to start. And if that feels like you, if that sounds like you, then I always find a brain dump is a brilliant way to start. And getting a big A3 piece of paper and just scribbling all your ideas all over it, just getting them out your head, because at the moment they're just swimming around in your head, bouncing off each other, and they're having no outlet. So bung them all down on an A3 piece of paper, and then you've got them out your head and you can see them, you can visualize them, and then you can think, well, get practical for each one. How much does this particular project, how much time do you think it's going to take you? What skills do you need for that particular project? How do you need to educate yourself with the technology or with the back end of a platform? They are tasks that you need to add to that project. Don't dismiss all the background stuff that you need to do before you start the project, because that all adds to it. And I think going back to people giving themselves so much to do is because they discount all the learning that they have to do in order to get the project off the ground in the first place. With Substack, with YouTube, with podcasting, with writing a book, there is a learning curve, and you do have to take that into account. So get it all out of your head and then start getting practical and breaking each project down so you can visually see how much work there is realistically to do. Now, one issue that I've had for a number of years is the feeling of being behind, or that time is just ticking away, and feeling this pressure here just to do it, and sort of creating out of fear that time's going to run out. And this is it's a horrible feeling. It's when you create out of fear, so you panic and you rush it, and maybe you're impulsive and you go in the wrong direction, or you do something because you think you should be doing it rather than something that means more to you and what something you desperately would like to do for yourself. So don't let your brain convince you that this is actually the case. Time is not running out. You have time. I know that people think, oh, I need to start straight away in January so I've got the full 12 months and I can really tackle the projects. 4 or 5 weeks have only gone by out of 52. You've still got a long period of time to achieve your dreams during 2024. Time's not running out. So please take a breath and just, I think it's really important that you start slow and then you can add over time once you get into a routine and a rhythm. But yes, calm. And then finally, for the get your head straight first section, there is perhaps that urge to beat yourself up if you don't get everything done. And I can't stress this enough. Please resist that. You've not failed if you don't complete all the tasks that you set out to do. It will just be a case of adjusting, working out how fast you work, working out how slow you work, working out whether you work better in the mornings, lunchtimes, afternoons, evenings. It's all a learning curve. You can't be expected to know the answers before you start. You are going to discover things about yourself and how you write and how you create all the time, and you adapt, you learn, and you take those bits of information and you get better each time. But you will still make mistakes, you will still fail, you will still experiment and find, actually, this doesn't feel like me, I'm going to drop that. Or you're going to find that actually I've left a project or a task until 8 o'clock at night and I really don't work well at 8 o'clock at night. This is all fine. Like I said, you are not expected to know everything straight away. So now we come to the practicals, okay? And these might cross over with getting your head straight tips, okay? So number one, visuals work very well for me, and that's why I use an A3 piece of paper and I have post-its on here to represent each task. Each column represents a project and each post-it represents a task within that project. Now, as you can see, I have 3 projects on the go, but I've been doing this now for a significant amount of time. I'm not starting these 3 projects from scratch in 1 month. I've got into a routine with them, I've got into a rhythm with them. The learning curve, even though it's still going on, it's flattened out. So I'm not on that sharp peak of learning. So that's why I can do 3 projects in a row. Additionally, I do this full time. You may have people, little people, older people to care for. You may have a full-time job and you're doing this in your spare time. You may have other things that's going on in your life. So this isn't to compare with me, oh, Helen's doing 3 projects a month, then so should you. No, that is definitely not the case. You have to work it out for yourself. We are all unique. We all have different demands upon our time. And this is what I mean. You have to learn how you work yourself. And if something doesn't work 1 month, it's fine to adapt. It does not mean you failed. I also use my post-it, my planning notebook as well. So that also helps me visually. The second tip, and maybe I should have started with this one, is to take your time to plan your projects and how much time you have available. And I know, because I was like this, that some of you think that planning out tasks is a waste of time when you could just be getting on with the work, with the writing, with creating whatever it is that you're creating. Taking out an hour when you feel that time is ticking away, you feel it's a waste of time. And I can categorically tell you now that in the majority of cases, it really isn't a waste of time. Now, I'm just going to look at my Substack article here, because I put 5 reasons why I actually save time through planning out my projects instead of wasting it. It's actually a time saver. So it's meant I haven't rushed into a project and had to backtrack and unpick everything. B, it's meant I haven't had massive crises in confidence and spent time trying to build myself back up again, because blimey, that takes time. C, it's meant that every month, week, and day, I know exactly what I have to do when I arrive at my desk each morning, and I don't waste time scratching my head wondering what task I'm supposed to be doing next. D, it's also meant that I'm consistent. I'm taking tiny steps every day and building up to something bigger. And E, finally, it's meant that my overwhelm has been reduced, making my head clearer for creative ideas and focus. So planning is not a waste of time. It's like building the foundations, if you like, of your creative month, and it gives you direction, and it encourages flow. And I can't emphasize enough how helpful that I have found it, and it's completely changed my creative life since adapting some sort of planning structure. So the third tip under practicals: plan out what projects you'd like to work on for the month ahead, but be realistic. And again, this overlaps with getting your head straight first and doing your brain dump and everything. And I kind of covered that in that section, but working out all the tasks that's required within a project is really, really helpful. Often you may never have done that project before, and so you don't always know what tasks are involved. And to that I say, well, maybe add in research as one of the tasks, so you can get an understanding of what's involved in that project, but you're still allocating research as part of your time, if that makes sense. And then I talk about dividing projects up into tasks, which yet again, I've kind of gone ahead a little bit of my notes here. And I do this on Post-its because visually I can then see just how much I have to do. And when it's all sort of laid out, these are all the morning pages that I would like to write every day this month during February. And it seems like a lot, but to me, visually, it helps me, because I wasn't putting write my morning pages. In January, I wasn't putting write my morning pages in my daily tasks. And I was getting to the end of the day and wondering why I hadn't achieved everything I'd set out to do. And that's because I hadn't taken into account that I needed to write my morning pages with everything else that I had going on. So visually, Post-its really, really help. And these are the small ones. I'll link these in the description box. They're also the Post-it brand, because I've found that the cheaper brands, they kind of fall off the piece of paper, because I pin this up on the notice board behind me, and cheaper ones just don't have that stickiness that you need to stay upright. Now, the other thing that I've learned with breaking projects down into tasks is that if I break, when I feel stagnant, when I feel I'm not achieving much, it's often because on one of my Post-its, the task just feels too big. and it actually feels like a mountain. And so if I break this task down further into even smaller tasks, this gives me momentum, which leads to increased motivation, which then leads to increased confidence. And I swear by that. So breaking your tasks down as small as you possibly can, if you need that push, if you get scared of bigger tasks, is really, really helpful. And then what I do at the beginning of each week, I take all the tasks that I would like to achieve during the course of the week off that piece of A3 paper, and I put them, and it's this kind of physical movement that really helps me. I put them into the week ahead. So this is my current week, and I've moved the post-its off the to be done sheet and action them for this week. And then I also write a list on that side of these tasks. That it's often a repeat of what's already on my post-its, but also it's additional things that I think of or that come up during that week. And at a glance, I can see exactly what I need to do. And again, just visually, it helps. And then the dopamine I get moving a task off that weekly schedule and onto the completed section, the dopamine I get when I move that over is it just fills me with joy. And so the smaller the tasks, the quicker I can move them, and the more dopamine I get and the more joy I get. And this is that momentum I'm talking about. This is the motivation I'm talking about. And this is one of the reasons why I have been able to increase my confidence over the last few years, because visually I can see that I'm making progress. I don't get to the end of the day and think, what is it that I've done today? I can actually see the progress that I've made. At the beginning of each day, this is my little routine every morning. So on a Monday morning, I will plan out my week ahead. But at the beginning of every morning, I will plan out what it is I would like to do in the day ahead of me. And I only do one day at a time. So today's Wednesday, so I did this one this morning. Again, it just gets you into the right mindset. It just helps you to see what you have. You're not sort of scrabbling about wondering what it is that you're doing today because you can't remember where you finished yesterday, what you did yesterday. That used to be such a big thing for me. I used to get to my desk and it would take me an hour to figure out what it is that I'm supposed to be doing. And that's why I love this planning system, because there's none of that anymore. It's just all there in front of me. So that's my tips. Now, these are just completely off the top of my head this morning, and there's probably more to it than just what I've said. I might have repeated myself in this video, might have duplicated a few tips, but I'm practicing what I preach, and this is not going to be perfect, but I just wanted to get it out for those of you who are struggling with some of these issues like perfectionism, like overwhelm, giving yourself too many projects to do, all that sort of thing. Now, on my Substack, on that overwhelm article I did on Monday, which I will link in the description box below, I did put a poll in there and said, would it be helpful if once a month on my Substack I did a kind of Zoom session, and I haven't worked out all the details yet, but do a Zoom session once a month where we can plan our writing and creative projects together. And maybe if you're stuck or if you're feeling overwhelmed, you can chat to me in the comments, or we can have a Q&A session once we've done the planning or partway through. At this stage, I'm not sure how it's going to look. I just felt there might be a need for a little bit of help and a little bit of motivation to plan out your projects, because it's all very well and good talking about wanting to write a book, or talking about wanting to start a Substack or a YouTube channel or a podcast or whatever, but we actually have to do the work. And that is the bit that can make your tummy flip and you think, God, where do I start? It feels enormous. So doing it in a community, knowing that there is this fixed time where you have permission to sit down for 40 minutes or an hour or whatever it is, again, like I say, not worked out the details yet, where you have permission to plan out what it is you'd like to do, I thought it might help anyway. And so if you're interested, come along to my Substack, sign up. At some stage over the next week, I will create a separate section on my Substack for those of you who are interested in planning out your creative projects. And yeah, it would be lovely to see as many of you as possible. And if you're thinking this isn't for you because you're not a proper writer, you're not a proper YouTuber or proper creative, it is for you. If this is something that you need help with in order to take that first step towards your creative dreams, then please do come along, because you'll find there are so many like-minded people there. Okay, that's it. If you've got any questions about any of this, if I need to clarify anything, if I need to make myself clearer, please do leave me a question in the comment box below, or email me through my Substack, however you want to contact me. I am here to share the benefits of my experience, because it's been a long old journey for me and I would like it to be quicker for you. Right, okay, thank you very much for watching this quite long video now. Thank you, bye-bye.